We are officially in the post-Daigo undefeated era because we just saw the conclusion of the Daigo versus MenaRD Kimono Michi first to 10 over at the newly created Evo Legends event. So this is the very first time that a Kimono Michi style showdown was hosted by an external party, now the Evo Legends team. We also had the undercards of Lagi versus Koichi in first to sevens and Arslan Ash versus Chikirun going on. So a lot of high level action, but of course everyone was looking forward to the Daigo versus MenaRD set. The best Street Fighter player of today versus the greatest Street Fighter player of all time going down. I even prepared a video about how Daigo was completely undefeated in these high-profile first to 10 sets versus Evo champions of past. That's over on the main channel. If you want to check that out, it provides a lot of context to why this is such a historic event. Not only is Daigo one of the most accomplished fighting game players, period, in the tournament sphere, but he is also undefeated in these sets and in many ways is one of the biggest and maybe the primary reason why the FGC exists as it is today. And with Kimono Michi going on, which is Daigo's own tournament series, the Way of the Beast, the Animal's Trail, it has a lot of weight to it to have that title associated with this event and to have Daigo, who is, you know, by all accounts at this point, kind of on the downturn. He hasn't been in the same competitive shape he had been for many years versus one of the most dominant players of this era, MenaRD. People were treating this with a lot of reverence. Papadua, are you here? A legendary commentator in the Japan scene had this to say going into the match. For those wondering, what is judo? Judo is Kimono Michi. I don't know why Grok translates this as judo. Everywhere you see judo, it's Kimono Michi. What is Kimono Michi? Here's an explanation. Kimono Michi is a 10-game series event hosted by Umehara. Its defining feature isn't just being a standard 10-game series, it's that two rivals with a history stake their pride alone on the line. Unlike a casual first to 10-game series, it presupposes a complete ranking as players where both parties agree and prepare with resolve to fight. There are no rematches. In other words, you'll have to accept this ranking and live your life accordingly from here on out. That's why it's a hot-blooded, intense, and cruel concept. Long before Kimono Michi, Umehara has never lost under these rules. That's why he's been deified, and his influence has skyrocketed. As the scene expands and he's approaching the age of 45, there's a high chance this could be his final duel. That's the mindset I'm watching this event with. So, with this in mind, with this context of how people are referring to this event, the Kimono Michi title, with the history of how Daigo is undefeated, how he is fighting games in a sense, people are going into this with high expectations and a high sense of reverence for the upcoming showdown. And everyone was excited to see when they showed up to the event that it was delayed by hours. This is what people were treated with in both the live stream and the in-person showing for about an hour and a half of delay, with no word from the organizers about what was going on, what was causing the delay, when the show would resume. We were treated with the Legends Live logo, a coming up screen, and their mixtape on repeat, the same soundtrack for at least an hour and a half before the show finally got underway. So there was a bit of technical hiccups to get the show started. And remember, there's limited seating in the venue itself. These people paid money to be there to witness history live in the making. And yeah, it was not a good start to the show. But after we got the first of sevens out of the way, you know, they had Lagi versus Koichi down to the wire, Arslan Ash versus Chikirun, decent competitive sets, right? But let's be real, they weren't there for that. Those sets were not Kimono Michi, right? Those were Evo Legends sideshows. These were strong players with limited historical context and limited rivalry with a narrative between them. That wasn't Kimono Michi. The audience in attendance and watching online was there for Kimono Michi first to 10, Daigo versus MenaRD. And many people were wondering, you know, with this aging legend, would he be able to inspire hope once more? Can he actually be Santa? Daigo was inspiring us with his words before the match. And well, for the first game,
about the conditioning that he has to do first.
We got to believe. First game here, hit confirm, heavy punch into the OD Adamant Fist, into the full combo conversion into the corner. Stand MK frame kill and the throw. And with the very first round in the first to 10, Daigo strikes first blood with a round on the board. And immediately people began to believe, because people were calling this a potential blowout. 10-0 for MenaRD. There's zero chance Daigo even could get on the board. But quickly, Daigo takes the first game, and in the second game, he's tied here in rounds. Just throws worth of life between the two players. Finds OD Fireball, driver shin, perfect spacing to make the slide whiff and the whip punish, and Daigo, first 2 games on the board, and suddenly the people were believing, wait a minute, Santa might be real. Well, after that, reality set in once more, and MenaRD quickly finds himself up 4 games in a row. And here we see the problem. OD Blanca Ball into the level 2, forces the burnout from Daigo. Daigo, he was playing solid in the first round. It's played solid in every first round, but with the level 2s in play, MenaRD takes the drive gauge away, drive rush in for the setup, gets the full combo conversion, and with barely any life remaining, sets up the safe jump, catches him on the jump back, sets up the block string here, conversion to the level 1, great awareness on the life and meter situation. MenaRD gets the chip out and puts 5 in a row on the board after Daigo put the first 2 games up. And you know what? People are starting to be a little bit concerned. This might end up being a 10-2. It might end up still being a wash. Except Daigo fires back 2 games in a row and up a round here. Daigo's on the verge of tying up this set. Gets the drive rush into the backdash bait, and that's 3 games in a row for Daigo. And we have a tied set between the Evo Vegas 2024, 2025 champion and the 2-time Evo Japan champion, with Daigo up 5-5. And we see a hint of something here, which might seem like people popping off. It might seem like people popping off. It might seem like Bonchan celebrating the tied set, but that might come up a little bit later. But as the set wore on, we got a hint of reality once more. Daigo did get 1 more game on the board, but as reality came to, we find out that Santa Claus might not be real. MenaRD on set point here, just playing defense. Daigo doing what he can to stay in this set. But MenaRD finds the drive rush cancel into the combo conversion, and with the score of 10-6, MenaRD takes the set, and Daigo's reign of dominance, his undefeated streak in high-profile first to 10s, comes to an end, and MenaRD is the champion. And with that, you know, people had to grapple with the fact that we're in a new era. Daigo, who's inspired us for so many years with his will to keep winning. The fact that not only was he a fighting game champion, he was a fighting game champion that evolved with the eras evolved with the games, and was always able to, even when he was down and out, work his way into a competitive situation where he could take down the next champion, and always found a way to make it through. He inspired people all over the world, including people like myself, right? A huge part of why the FGC exists today is due in no small part to this guy's legacy right here. So how was the community, the FGC at large, reacting to this loss? Well, on the Western side of things, there was a lot of complaining about level 2. Why doesn't Daigo activate his level 2 win the game install? Man, at first, the first reaction to this whole set was a lot of people complaining about how MenaRD achieved this victory. If you actually break down the statistics, Daigo won about 80% of the opening rounds of every game. That 10-6 does not tell the whole story, because it was legitimately a close 10-6. Every single game, nearly every single game except for 2, I believe, had Daigo have a win on the board or winning the very first round. However, MenaRD would often use Blanca's level 2 very effectively in the second round and use it early, and often build another level 2, a second one, during the final round, and was able to overwhelm Daigo's defense, attack his drive gauge, and make a comeback that way. The level of play was really high, but yeah, so many people were complaining, wow, Daigo's playing Street Fighter, but MenaRD is playing cheap, unhonorable Street Fighter 6 with that cheap Blanca and cheap level 2 install. Somehow people are acting like Akuma's low tier. In this discourse, I'm starting to get the sense like, wait, do you guys think that Akuma is the honest character here? It was starting to get a little ridiculous. I'm like, we're talking about Akuma. Let's all remember this, okay? Daigo is not playing some shitty, honest character either here. Let's be real. But this was the big sentiment from a lot of the Daigo fanboys on the Western side, trying to cope with the L, right? MenaRD didn't win the right way. How was Daigo coping with it? Well, I think he was enjoying himself and, you know, celebrating the evening regardless after the set concluded. So I think Daigo will be okay. We'll get back to that as well, how he's doing in a little bit. However, there was some other issues with the event besides the outcome not matching people's expectations. For example, you know, maybe you're in the audience and you can't handle the fact that Daigo lost. Don't worry, production has you covered. Because right after MenaRD delivered the final death blow to Daigo, an Evo Classic winner, Daigo went up on the screen. Oh wait, scratch that, production. Sorry, it wasn't. It was the bad ending. Get Mena up on their stat. So that was rather disappointing in the eyes of the audience there in the venue. This was also disappointing as well, though. For certain portions of the gameplay, for some reason, they got the cinematic edition where it was zoomed in so you can't see any of the overlays. Looks kind of cool for a trailer, but when you're actually trying to watch the match, it's kind of hard to tell what the hell is going on. When they zoom so far in, you can't see anything. Okay, there, they corrected it. And there was just a lot of hiccups, including just a blank screen at some points where you're just missing some of the rounds. So on top of the spectators there in person being forced to wait hours for the show to begin past its scheduled time, there was all these technical hiccups along the way that were just kind of adding salt to the wound for the people there who were obviously there to celebrate the legacy of Daigo Umehara. But there was other issues as well, like the general vibe of the venue, the layout, the setup, and the production event that it tried to achieve. Slowly it dawned on people that this isn't what they had expected. One of the biggest issues that I saw is this is right after the set concluded. For some reason, they had Daigo sign a Rejects jersey and hand it to MenaRD like it was supposed to mean something. And then they both awkwardly stood there on the stage while the commentators tried to bring the event home, where eventually, finally, someone from the production team walked out and basically told MenaRD and Daigo, hey, you can go home now, it's over. And they just awkwardly walked off stage. So they just sat there and stared at the audience in silence for about a minute or two for no reason. And people were very confused about the spectacle of the entire experience. And that was not unnoticed by the Japanese audience, who took this very seriously. Eventually, the complaints started pouring into Twitter. Here we have the apologies from Shoyo Koyama, who I believe is part of Team Reject, saying that, you know, they are a part of this event and they deeply apologize for how the event was put on. We even have apologies from Rick from Evo. We acknowledge that our preparations and considerations for the historic match scheduled at Legends Live were insufficient. And as a result, we deeply regret and having disappointed all the players, fans, and partners who deserved a far better experience. On behalf of Evo, we sincerely apologize. And the comments are not kind here. This is in Japanese, just to be clear, apologizing to the Japanese audience. And then here, I think, is one of the best tweets that summarizes a lot of the complaints and issues coming out, because it becomes clear that this isn't just about the lack of polish or the production quality around the Evo Legends event. But here they describe that when you think the sound is too quiet, it blasts super loud, then drops to barely audible. The venue screens show the wrong footage, the wrong materials are used. They showed winner Daigo when Daigo lost. The English commentary and Japanese commentary are right next to each other, so if you're sitting in the middle, you hear different languages blasting from left and right. Your brain starts glitching out. The Japanese commentators' headsets keep picking up the English commentary, and there are tons of technical issues. They had people come in at 10 a.m. The show didn't start to 7 p.m. So many different actual production and technical issues for the show itself that was really impacting the experience of the players and the people there. However, it wasn't quite clear the scale of the complaints that the Japanese audience was having for this event until Bonchan put the tweet out. Bonchan put out the tweet with 31,000 likes. And when I saw this, I was like, what the hell is going on? Because we've dealt with bad production in the past. We've seen Evo production. People complain about how many Chipotle ads are being put on during the Evo broadcasts all the time. Like, this is not new to the Western audience, but to see Bonchan, like a pro Street Fighter player, speak out, a very highly revered player as well, this obviously was reaching a different level. So Bonchan here says, the Beast Path was an event that Ume-san took time to organize, focusing on humans in a way that had never been done before, featuring combinations with deep-seated rivalries and backstories that were crucial. It wasn't just about feeling frustrated over loss, it stirred up emotions so intense, like something you truly couldn't forgive, that words alone felt too provocative to even try capturing it. What bothered me the most was whether Ume-san's pre-match interview properly reached people outside Japan. The bizarre pre-match performance where they asked for winner predictions in the venue made no sense. If you knew anything about the Beast's Path, it would never happen 100%. It was such a regrettable way to present it, and it made me so sad. It's not just some exhibition, you know. The match itself was 100% Mena's triumph. He achieved something unprecedented. Congratulations. I have so many gripes about the event that, despite never usually sharing my feelings on Twitter at all, I just had to write this because I really want to get it across. I hope it improves. So I saw this and I was like, whoa, like they must have really messed up. Like, what did they mess up with the interview specifically? And what was the issue about like asking the audience for a winner predictions, right? Well, I put out a tweet to help get some more clarification, context of what people were talking about. And I got a lot of replies, and they took this shit seriously. You cultivate a rare and beautiful flower, and the local people are captivated by its beauty. They all plant their own flowers in that spot, creating a special place. Suddenly, a wicked rich man appears, proclaiming, "Let's hold a flower show. I know a way to make it look even more beautiful." He tramples in, knocking over the flowers, compacting the ground, and leaves without completing the project. And this is one of the hundreds of replies I got describing the scale of disrespect felt by the fans of Daigo and Komodo Michi, and how not just the failure in the production resulted in them disrespecting the spectacle on display. It was that fundamentally the show from the ground up was not in the correct spirit for what Komodo Michi was supposed to mean. That even if they had achieved their goal with perfect execution, no downtime, no technical issues whatsoever, it would have failed to be a Komodo Michi event. Anna here, who is Bonchan's wife actually, added some more context. Two specific things he mentions here are how Daigo's pre-match comment on, "I'm turning 45 next month, but today is my peak, so you should be proud if you beat me." Comment was not translated at all. That comment alone had so much context and weight, since he had also mentioned to people around him that if he loses, he would consider retiring. Now, I believe what was translated in the pre-match interview was that it was more along the lines of, "I'm turning 45 next month, so you caught me in my prime," almost like a joke that like you caught me before I turned 45. At 44, I'm in my prime, but at 45, I fall off. So there was it didn't capture the context. It felt more like a joke, like, haha, finally, dude, I'm not getting any younger, versus even though I'm getting older, I'm actually getting better with age. And this is going to be the final test of my skill. Secondly, he mentioned how the audience was asked things like, "Clap, you think Daigo's going to win?" right in front of the players pre-match. That kind of interaction showed that the event organizers didn't fully understand the seriousness and magnitude of the match. This was the confusing part at first to me, because the whole make some noise, clap for and cheer for who you like to win, this is like general esports noise. And for someone like me at this point, I filter that out. When I watch a stream, I kind of I'm so overexposed to that kind of filler that I don't even recognize it. And I'm just waiting for the actual context of the match to begin. So this wasn't jarring to me because it doesn't even register in my mind at all. So at first I didn't really understand. I was like, why is that? Like, it's corny potentially, but what is the significance of this exact comment? And the more context you get, it makes a bit more sense, because it is a very different tone if you watch other Komodo Michis in the past. But other people were adding context. Grim here says, "It was more show than competition, which was the issue. The nuance is that Americans like to encourage the public to be noisy and lively because for them, an event is about entertainment and fun. For many in the world, that is not the adequate, respectful behavior towards players pitting their passion." So I replied, Was the expectation to treat it with more of a somber, quiet reverence, as opposed to Capcom Cup, where the JP audience does get very lively? If you watch other tournaments, the JP audience, they get hype, man. They're cheering. They're even cheering in those clips that we saw. They're going crazy for the show. Yes, this was not an international cup. This was a duel to see who was better, where we are thankful to be allowed to watch. Look at how many audience members tried to cover their faces, and Concha even shooed the camera. I think this might be Bonchan. Even shooed the camera. The focus was not on the competition, but the audience. I did not catch that context. Did you see in that previous clip? When Bonchan is yelling at the camera, he's telling them to look at the players. So the camera work, which is very typical for an EVO production, of something hype happens in the game, in between rounds, you might show audience reactions. That was considered to be extremely disrespectful because it was supposed to be just an observation of the players themselves. The crowd should be irrelevant to the experience. The event should be happening regardless of if there's an audience or not. The idea of the reverence of the moment. This could have been a Western shootout, right? Meet me at dawn outside of town, and we're gonna have a shootout duel to the death. It doesn't matter if anyone's here to witness it. We're doing it for our own personal reasons. Or, two warriors meeting in the forest. If we are being allowed to witness something, and it should not be the focus. Like, there's supposed to be this air of literally battling to the death. And this was a metaphorical death for someone's career. And the idea with the Kimono Michi, the way of the beast, right, is the idea that you can never have a rematch. This is something that's going to be a mortal wounding. So the idea of asking who do you prefer to win is akin to saying who do you want to die. The vibe was supposed to be more like a funeral, according to a lot of the audience members. Someone was going to die today. You're going to be seeing the death of someone's career in fighting games. A part of them is going to die. And for most people in the audience, they kind of knew and were expecting that Daigo was going to die. The legend of Daigo being an undefeated member in these high-profile sets of the community, the man who inspired millions of people around the world to try fighting games, was going to die. So in that context, to be there, like, cheer for who you want to win, it's kind of like they're going to cheer for Daigo to win. It's like they're saying, hey, we hope MenaRD dies. Like, that's the level of seriousness they're approaching this moment with, versus the other side of it, where it's like we're getting excited to experience this. And so there's a big cultural clash here with how the Kimono Michi portion of the event versus the EVO Legends branding and production team approached this. If this was not Kimono Michi, this would be more acceptable. But once that Kimono Michi branding and tagline are associated with it, it's supposed to be next level reverence, somber, almost cruel, like you mentioned, that someone will be losing part of themselves in this set. You will never get a run back. You'll always lose that status that you are the loser in this match versus this other player, and you can never regain that, no matter where your career takes you. So there was other context here as well, because Umehara did stream the next day, and they say here in Umehara's post-stream event, it was revealed that the decision for the EVO side to do a 10-man exhibition, a first to 10 exhibition, was made early on, and that the manager had a proposal to make it a Beast Path Kimono Michi event, and that came quite late in the process. That's why there seems to have been a disconnect between the organizers and the audience. The Beast Path is a clash of lives, and the spectators didn't want to hype it up as a show. They wanted to be a witness to see it through. This was literally like watching two people battle to the death, and to show respect to that that level of vulnerability on display. So there was a clash there of expectations, and then on top of that, the production issues and everything made it feel cheap and artificial, and the vibe was wrong, and then Daigo also lost. So all these factors became a giant shitstorm of people being very upset with how the whole ordeal was treated. That was because specifically of this line right here. You see Lagia versus Goichi, Arslan versus Chikudun. These were not Kimono Michi matches. These were just EVO Legends versus Sevens. They did not have the narrative stakes, the history, or the context to warrant such a match. But the Kimono Michi, Daigo versus MenaRD, that was Kimono Michi. And so that carries a lot of weight to it, and EVO Legends failed to meet those expectations. I mean, if you go to the Kimono Michi website, I don't even know if this is official or not, but there's an entire documented history of every Kimono Michi event that has ever been held, and they're complete with full stories, the context, interviews. Like, they're building these things up to be very important events because it's supposed to be treated with that level of reverence and that amount of finality, right? Tokido beat Kawano and Kimono Michi. That's it. Kawano can never challenge Tokido ever again in this type of a format. Tokido owns his soul to that degree, right? So that's the stakes that were supposed to be communicated, and that's the stakes and that context that was not met by the production. And you can see in the promotional material, especially on the Japan side of things, there wasn't much about Evo Legends going on. You look at the YouTube videos being put out, it's Komodo Michi. Evo, that logo is nowhere here at all. Look at these other promotional material. Komodo Michi. Evo Legends is not on any of the thumbnails, any of the promotional materials. It's not about Evo Legends. That's just the production team running this. It's about Komodo Michi. So this was expected to be the focus, especially from the Japanese audience. And when you look at what a Komodo Michi event has been, if we look back to the legendary Daigo versus Tokido first at 10, it's not that people are not watching and cheering. It's not that they don't do interviews with the players or get their thoughts. It's that these matches could have happened with or without an audience. This is Daigo versus Tokido in an arcade. There is an audience, but it's people crowded around arcade machines, watching, cheering politely, but trying to stay out of the way of the event on display. It's not about the audience themselves. They're just lucky to be able to witness what is occurring. There's this level of this like down-to-earth atmosphere about it. It's not on a stage. It's not with this artificial lighting, and it's not with all these different production teams and camera angles and everything. It's just two people playing in an arcade. And of course, that ended with golf claps in a somber mood. People were quiet. Tokido bowed his head on stage and he teared up when he failed to defeat Daigo in this set. Yes, they had an interview with it. Yes, people did clap for it, but it was a moment of great respect, reverence, and a somber mood in the air. Tokido died in his path to try to take down Daigo Umehara, and he will never get that opportunity ever again at this level. And so that was the expectation going into this. But instead, what they got was Evo Legends branding backed by, corporate interest with what people believe or perceive to be a corporate cash grab to capitalize on an event built by Umehara and grassroots efforts. And it's what we've been seeing a little bit with Evo and its expansion. I feel like this is the first time we're seeing any kind of backlash in that direction, especially from the Japanese community. And, obviously this is backed by like the Saudi funding. Evo is completely Saudi owned at this point. They're trying to expand aggressively. They're adding events all over the world. And it's a weird tipping point because I don't think we've seen any sort of backlash from the Japanese community at this scale about this expansion until this point. That Evo has trampled on something sacred with this overreach by not treating this with the level of care and respect and executing like they needed to and in the right way. They've tapped into something. It was very interesting to see that reaction. And it makes me wonder what's next, because we're already seeing Saudi Arabia is not having a good time. What was once the infinite money glitch seems like the infinite money valve is starting to dry up, and they're closing the valve. We see Saudi Arabia here just recently pulled out of Live Golf, which was their initial kind of template for sports washing, for taking over other sports scenes and investing tons of money, millions and millions of dollars to try to take over whatever kind of sports enterprise they can, and use that as a way to help, sports wash and improve their economic portfolio and their image amongst the world, right? So I feel like we're seeing some multiple cracks on different levels, just like the economic level with Live Golf, and then also the cultural level with where in the FGC they kind of finally took a misstep for the largest FGC community, which is Japan, right? And so where does that leave Daigo amongst all of this, right? I showed Daigo here after the event, and with all this discussion around how the event went down, how the set played out, what does this mean for the history of Komodo Michi and Daigo and his legacy? What does Daigo do next, right? I showed this tweet earlier, but I didn't show the translation. It says, "This year, I'm dead serious." So this might have come across as just, you know, a drunken hype speech after a historic moment. You know, you got to hear what he says the next day, right? Saying this year I'm dead serious, looking like this, you know, sounds great in the moment. We got to see what he says the next day. But Giuna has the translation here from Daigo going on his stream the next day to talk about this set. And so I'm going to read this tweet here out to you guys for those listening in. Daigo on stream talking about Komodo Michi. He says he seriously planned on retiring if he lost to Mena. The reason being that since Street Fighter 6 releases, he has not felt strong or the motivation to improve like in his youth in the arcade days. But after 3 months of training in the final week before the match, he thought, wait a minute, am I strong again? This is what it felt like back in the day. He was incredibly stressed the day before the match and couldn't eat, and said just walking outside felt like he was already in the fight. He thought he wouldn't be able to sleep due to stress, but surprisingly fell asleep easily. However, when he woke up, he had tears in his eyes. He doesn't know why, but he thinks it's because he had a dream where he quit fighting games. After he lost to Mena, he still thought it was time to retire. But in the taxi ride back to Tokyo, Ada kept bothering him and begging him not to. Daigo agreed just to shut him up, but then he thought back on that feeling of being strong in the last week and thought if he could keep that same motivation and approach he had for Komodo Michi, he could become strong again. For now, he's decided to continue competing, but is taking a short rest after the set. I want to try my best again. It was so fun. Those 3 months were the best. Thank you, Mena. Daigo's great because he goes from this heartfelt talk that he has the chat in tears to, I'm making too much money from the stream. I don't want to turn it off. So obviously people are very emotional. I'm sure the donations and the super chats and whatnot were coming flying in for Daigo. And he's balling out in the Twitch bucks. But, I mean, this does mean something, right? Like, this is Daigo Umaha we're talking about. He is finally a player who has been defeated. In some ways, that might be liberating to finally give up that title of being undefeated, where he can then proceed and move forward with the next phase. Daigo is currently qualified for Capcom Cup. He qualified by being on the winning team for Street Fighter League Worlds with Team Reject. This means that we're going to see Daigo at Capcom Cup for the very first time since 2019. Is this the year he locks in? He has, in my mind, one really good last shot to do something on the biggest stage that Street Fighter has to offer. And I'm just happy to see that despite all the drama with how Komodo Michi was handled, despite the definite issues with the production, despite the maybe lack of respect for the event series Komodo Michi that Daigo had built by Evil Legends, and the fact that he lost 10-6 and has lost his undefeated godhood status, Daigo will compete, at least for the time being. And that's all I got for this video. Let me know what you think about the Daigo versus MenaRD first to 10, the whole fallout surrounding it, and that's about it. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.